everyone, my name's Louise. I'm the Community Associate here at the Watermill Theatre, currently in my living room, and I'm about to have a chat with Scarlet Wilderink, who is an actor and puppeteer who works for us at the Watermill and has worked on a number of shows. Hello, Scarlet.
Hello.
Thank you for being with us today for this interview, which we're showing as part of a programme that we're offering as part of our Easter workshops. And this is the first one that we're doing, so thank you. First, tell us a little bit about what you've done with the Watermill already, actually. Which shows have you done with us?
So in my first time at the Watermill, I worked on a play called Watership Down, which was, I think, 4 years ago now. It's mad. And that was my first experience with the Watermill. It was absolutely incredible. It was everything that I thought the Watermill was going to be. Just really, yeah, very, very special. And that was a show about rabbits, but we weren't puppeteering rabbits. Being rabbits in our own human selves. And I'm actually at the Watermill now, but if I was at my mum's place, I'd be able to be wearing my ears because we got to take our ears home. So we were humans playing rabbits, and we just had these sort of ears that were made out of these hats with 2 bits of wire that became the ears, and they were really characterful and cool. But the puppets in that show were all of the other animals. So we had a dog and a stoat and a seagull as well. So yeah, that was my first. And then I came back a few years later to do a piece of street theatre, which I think is the first time the Watermill has ever done it. But they wanted to take something into the town in Newbury, and Danielle Pearson was, I'm not sure if she still is, the writer in residence here.
Yeah.
She wrote a piece all about Newbury and the history of Newbury. Very, very cool. And me and one other actor musician sort of Pied Pipered the Newbury town around to tell stories about different locations in Newbury, which was really, really cool. So there was no puppets in that. And then my most recent project was the Wicker Husband, that premiered here at the Watermill just over a week ago, which was very cool.
That was a brand new musical, wasn't it?
Brand new musical, and the central character was a puppet, which was very exciting because that doesn't often happen. So yeah, loads of puppetry in that.
Amazing. Well, we look forward to, in this conversation, learning a bit more about puppeteering in particular and how we might be able to get involved. Could you tell us and anyone watching a little bit about your journey to becoming an actor puppeteer? Was it something that you always knew that you wanted to do, or has it emerged as your career's gone on?
Yeah, it definitely emerged as my career went on. It kind of happened by mistake, which is how a lot of actors, I think, find puppetry. They end up being a little bit on a show as part of something else. So it might not be a show where puppetry is the main focus, but they kind of sort of get nominated to do a little bit of puppetry, and then you sort of like get a taste for it, and lots of people fall in love with it, which is what happened to me.
What was the show that you worked on that kind of sparked your interest?
Well, it was actually Warhorse. Was my first production, which seems mad because that is actually a puppet show, but I was never meant to be in it as a puppeteer because I auditioned for it as a song person. So there's a character who is sort of the narrator, who sings the music and plays the accordion through the show, and that's the role that I was auditioning for. And I went in to meet the team a couple of times, and then they managed to get somebody else who'd already done the role a couple of years before to come back to do the production. So they said to me, look, we know that you've come in a couple of times and this role isn't available anymore, but you know, we've had one person say that they're going to leave the production and they're a puppeteer. Would you be interested in training as a puppeteer with us?
Wow.
And obviously I ever think that would be an opportunity, but I just jumped at the chance. And I'm so glad I did, because that basically changed my whole life, like my whole work life and my relationship with theatre altogether, I think.
Tell us a bit more about how your relationship with theatre has changed thanks to getting involved with Warhorse and puppets and.
Well, it's definitely sort of, because I trained in musical theatre.
Mm-hmm.
I did it because I was a singer. First of all, I was really into music as a kid, and I did music at school. And I wanted to try and combine music and theatre together. So I thought a musical theatre course would be the best thing for me. And even though I love musical theatre, love musicals, I sort of, when I graduated, I kind of was a bit directionless. Like I didn't really know how I fit into the world of musical theatre.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent a bit of time actually being a movement director, which is one of my other things that I love, which ties in quite nicely with puppetry, actually, when I think about it. So I sort of kind of moved away from musical theatre fairly quickly, even though I just spent 3 years training to do it. But that doesn't matter. I think that we'll talk a bit more about drama school, and I'll be able to, maybe shine some light on that a bit. But yeah, my relationship with theatre, I guess, has become much more sort of colourful than I ever thought it was going to be. I think opening up puppetry has meant that I learn more about world theatre, because puppetry is a European style, so I've learned a lot about mask theatre and collaborative devised theatre and storytelling and all of those different types of theatre that I might not have necessarily had a relationship with had I pursued musical theatre in
Amazing. And hopefully you're going to maybe later on send us through some links of where people can find out a bit more about physical theatre, European theatre, mask, all that stuff that you're saying. That sounds like it really goes hand in hand with puppetry. Sounds like there's a lot of interlinking things there.
Yeah, absolutely does. Yeah, I will definitely send you some things.
That'd be great, and I'll put them in a package and they'll be available to anyone that watching this. So you mentioned drama school, and that's you kind of went to go and train in musical theatre at the Guildford School of Acting, which I can vouch for because I also went there. And I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your training experience and how you found that helpful, and whether or not you think that it's necessary for someone that's interested in becoming an actor-puppeteer to go and train, and maybe just speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I think I sort of come across this question quite a lot, and I always find it really interesting. And the more work I do, the more people I meet who are from extremely different backgrounds, like really eclectic, different backgrounds of training, if they've even done training at all, different skill sets, and it really does make for a sort of very colourful group of people when you're putting a cast together, to have all of those different backgrounds and different flavours, you know. For example, the Wicker Husband is a perfect example of the coming together of very, very different people. And I'll just talk about the Wicker Husband puppeteers, because I was sort of part of that team, and there was 3 of us, and I had come from a musical theatre, fallen into puppetry, actor musician type role. Yazdan had come up through being in a boy band.
Just tell us who Yazdan was in.
The head puppeteer of the Wicker Husband and also voiced the character. So he came from being in a boy band, and then did a long running musical called The Band, which was about to take that, or it was based on Take That. And you know, he sort of was on television and he won a competition, and he kind of came through that quite commercial background. And then Elon, who was puppeteering the centre, the body of the Wicker Husband, is a percussionist who trained all over the place, like even in like Cuba. He's learned about drumming in Cuba, and he's done sort of mask, like quite a mask, and he works with as an associate with some companies in Paris, doing sort of like all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. So all three of us have come from totally different backgrounds. Some of like I think I'm the only person who went to drama school training, because Elon went and did a degree, then he did a master's in music, I think, or music performance. And Yazdan hasn't been to drama school at all. So that's a really lovely way of looking at it, the way that we can come together and still produce, you know, really good stuff. But yeah, I sort of, you know, I digress a bit, but going to back to the question about whether you think it's absolutely necessary, I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I think it's, you know, if it's not accessible for any reason, which a lot of the time it's not, there are lots of ways now that you can learn about an art form. We have the internet, which is incredible, and you can learn so much from hearing people talk. You can learn so much about watching theatre. You can do short courses in summer schools, and you know, you could sort of basically get a vocational training made up of little short courses here and there in different types of theatre, which would actually be really cool.
What do you think, for those of us that are, or those people that are watching that are interested in going to drama school, potentially? I'm thinking about my own experience, because obviously, like I said, I went to the same drama school as you, and my path has gone slightly differently. I went into outreach work, and then decided to train as a drama therapist, but I think there was a lot of benefit from going to drama school, because it gave me a maybe quite disciplined, very hard working. So if people aren't going to go and train, or if they are, what do you think they still need to kind of work on and develop, and what were the benefits?
Yeah, the benefits of going to drama school, like you're right, there are lots as well. Especially for me, who sort of went into drama school having not really done sort of much theatre at all. I sort of learning from scratch so many things, and I think without it sort of giving me that fast track, or that massive chunk of information in the 3 years in that intense way, I think it would have taken me quite a long time to learn and to catch up, because I sort of went with people who, you know, had already sort of been in youth groups and done shows and sort of been around theatre. So sometimes I felt like I was sort of playing catch up. So drama school was very helpful for me in that. And it's also really helpful for you as a person. Like you said, you know, like your path has gone in another direction, you've gone into drama therapy. I'm sure that, you know, in anything that you do, even if you graduate and then you decide to become a lawyer, or
Absolutely,
you know, you still learn about your relationship to yourself. There's a lot of emotional work that you can do at drama school, which you wouldn't necessarily get in other courses or in school. voice work, you learn about public speaking, you know, you sort of gather all of these skills that you take for granted a little bit. You know, things like this, like doing a video recording, you know, there are some people I think who, if they hadn't had practice in speaking in front of people, even if it's just phone, it's quite nerve-wracking, you know. My sister works in finance and she has to give these, you know, board, like a room full of people, a pitch about something, and she gets terrified, you know, because it's not something that you ever think that you have to do going into that kind of sector, but you do, you know, and it's those skills you learn at drama school. So they're invaluable and transferable in any profession that you go into.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I know lots of people that I trained with that have gone on to do a range of careers, and I think they've been really well served by getting that training. But I think it sounds really exciting from what you're saying, that if we have people watching this that are interested in either acting or acting puppeteering, that it can be your journey can be your own journey, and you don't have to do it like everyone else. And that sounds, for me, it's really exciting to hear. You know, I can go and learn lots of different styles from lots of different places. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm just looking. So yeah, you've talked about a bit about the Wicker Husband, which was the brand new musical that we were doing here at the Watermill, that unfortunately had to be cut short because of the current situation that we find ourselves in. But in that show, you said you talked about the other puppeteers that you work with and how you work to create the central character of the Wicker Husband. And I wondered if you could speak a little bit about the benefits that you found for that character being a puppet as opposed to being played by an actor, because I suppose there could have been other ways it was done in. So yeah.
Yeah, and that absolutely. There was a big conversation about whether the Wicker Husband should be a puppet, because obviously, sort of logistically and financially, it's much more difficult because you need three people to play one person, and you need another skill set. So you need, that comes with a puppetry director and a puppetry designer and a whole team of people who are making the puppets, and a whole, you know, people who are maintaining the puppets. So it's like, it's quite a big undertaking for any theatre to do this. So it was really amazing we got the opportunity, because for a while, you know, they were talking about having it played by a human, sort of with quite an extensive physical theatre outlook in terms of, you know, how they would portray the character as being part of another world, different world.
This character was, just to give people who didn't get a chance to see it on its very, very short run, this character was in the story is created out of wicker.
And actually in real life the puppets were made of real wicker,
which was amazing to watch, wasn't it? The way they were created. Just, we'll try to get some pictures to link with this, because absolutely stunning. So much work went into them, and I know because I saw a lot of it happening at the Watermill.
Yeah, so much work. I think it was incredibly special to sort of be able to portray this character with such authenticity. Like, not only was he actually made of wicker, which was just really cool, but narratively it's perfect, because the Wicker Husband and the character called the Ugly Girl are two characters in a village who are ostracized for being different. And it was just so sort of charming to have a central character be a puppet, because there is a level of charm that you get from puppetry that I think is irreplaceable. Like, obviously you could get an incredibly good actor, an incredibly good physical theatre performer to portray him, but there is something very, very unique about him being brought to life by three different people who are all very different. So yeah, it was very, very layered and colourful, and yeah, pretty special.
Yeah.
So yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, it looked stunning, and hopefully, you know, in another time it will come, the whole show can be brought back to life. Who knows what will happen, because we're in this very unknown time, but yeah, I can certainly vouch for that charm, and bringing 3 different people's personalities sort of go into that, to the making of that puppet. And in fact, while we're here, you said there's also so we had the puppet makers, the designer, and the puppet director, which is a kind of a special and different job in itself. Could you talk a little bit about the role of a puppet director and what they do within a show that has puppets in it?
Yeah, so the puppet director works very closely with the director, obviously. The tricky thing about having a musical is you would normally have, with a musical with puppets and instruments, is you have a director, a puppetry director, and a musical director, and the choreographer, all in the room at the same time, who are all working on the same piece. And often the sort of worlds collide a little bit, because puppetry will cross over into choreography very, very easily. Because out of the movement then becomes dance. So then Stephen Harris, who is our choreographer, would choreograph the Wicker Husband as if he was choreographing a human. And then Finn Caldwell, who is our puppetry director, would then come in and try and make it look good. So we would basically be doing all of Stephen Harris's choreography, but learning the technique from Finn. So that they had a really good system going on. And same thing with Charlie Westenra, who is the director. Obviously, she sort of looks at the whole piece in its entirety and all of the staging. So she sort of communicates with Finn as well, in terms of getting the Wicker Husband to move around the stage where she wants him to go, which sounds very basic. She's not a basic director, but in terms of the shape of a piece and how it works as a whole. But of course, then puppetry has its own unique difficulties in terms of sight lines, and staging will come into that in a big way. So it was about us negotiating how we can deliver the blocking of a scene that feels right, but then make it look good in the puppet as well, which is a different thing.
It's a huge task, isn't it? All of those people coming together, and you know, how many weeks did you have to do this?
We had 4 weeks rehearsal.
Yeah, so it's a very short time to kind of put all of these people and ideas together and create something wonderful and magical, which I think everyone really did.
Yeah.
Can you just explain a little bit about what sightlines are that the people that are?
Yeah. So sightlines, especially for the Watermill, as a unique space in itself, but for puppetry as a whole, with the character being, with the Wicker Husband character being operated by 3 people, there's more people than there are puppets. So often it means that we have to negotiate where us as puppeteers go, in order to make as much of the Wicker Husband visible to as much of the audience as possible. Obviously, that is not always available to us, because the Watermill Theatre, for people who haven't been in the auditorium, sort of works as a half thrust in a way, because the circle slips, which are above, which is the first level above, are all around the stage, sort of on 3 sides. So as you're standing in the centre of the stage, you have people behind you, above you. So you sort of need to stage things in a way that makes sure that everybody gets a little bit of what you're offering. It's much easier for the people on the ground floor in the stalls, because they're pretty much end on, and sightlines can be easier for those, especially with puppetry. But things like turning in a circle, as an actor, as a human actor, we're not so bothered by. But as soon as you have a puppet with 3 people behind it, and you circle, as soon as you have your back to the audience, all they can see is the puppeteer.
Yeah.
So,
then I suppose it takes the risk of losing us believing this puppet is a human or a real wicker man.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fine line between sort of not hiding the fact that you're puppeteering him, because that's very obvious, and we want to triumph the fact that it is a puppet, which is cool, but at the same time still keep this belief there.
Yeah, amazing. So it's a lot to think about, isn't it, when you bring in puppets into a show? There's a lot for everyone to consider. Not just, it sounds like it's not just the people that are actually puppeteering, but everyone else involved in the production.
Absolutely, yeah.
And another character that you puppeteered in The Wicker Husband was Basket the dog, who was the maker's dog that he'd also made out of wicker in the story, and I just really loved seeing that character been brought to life. And I just wondered if you could tell us, well, what you thought of being Basket, and maybe if you had a favourite puppet that you'd worked with, not just here at the Watermill, but from your career so far.
Yeah, Basket the dog was adorable. I loved that puppet so much, and I just love that it was an actual basket. And Erica, who is the basket maker, who lives in Newbury, which I just thought was unbelievable.
Just to make this clear to everyone that's watching, that the basket maker, she's the real life basket maker, not the basket maker. There's a basket maker in the story, and then there's Erica, who it happens to live locally, who is a basket maker by trade, which is a real skill. Sorry,
so rare, and just, you know, couldn't believe that she lives around the corner. It was kind of amazing, but she can pretty much make anything out of willow. I mean, it's remarkable. I didn't even think that it was possible. You know, the fact that she made the shape of a dog, and she just put little legs on this basket, and suddenly it was a dog. It was phenomenal. So yeah, it was so charming, that puppet, and very, very simple as well, which made it, in a way, narratively even more fun, because he was sort of like a bit gross, and a bit
cheeky,
kind of,
wasn't he, the dog?
The dog.
Yeah.
What did you say? Sorry.
A bit cheeky.
Yeah, a bit cheeky and kind of like filthy, like always rolling around in the mud, and kind of like no airs and graces. And so, in terms of like him as a puppet, the mechanisms were fairly simple, which I think was perfect for his character. Like, wasn't too complicated, or yeah. So I really enjoyed him, and also I loved playing Basket at the Watermill, because there were so many dogs here.
Many dogs.
I was able to sort of put a bit of all the dogs in Basket. So that was good. He had Lola's ears.
Oh, that's my dog, by the way, just to give some context there. So yeah, there's lots of people that work at the Watermill have dogs. So if you've been to our outreach department, you may have seen them sniffing around, quite literally. But there's many cute dogs in the building, of which I have one, and so I'm glad her ears were incorporated into this puppet. Maybe that's why I loved watching Basket. And what about any other puppets that you've puppeteered that you are really memorable, or maybe that you miss because they're so?
Well, I'd have to sort of, I mean, everyone says this is the obvious choice, but I think there's good reason for it. Like, my favourite puppet to this day, and I think probably forever, is Baby Joey in Warhorse. Just because he was the first you know, I met puppetry on that show, and I fell in love with puppetry on that show, and that will always be an incredible experience for that
And
reason.
what character was Baby Joey? What type of?
The foal, the horse, the baby. So for anyone who hasn't read the book or seen the film or the play, the central character is the horse that belongs to the boy who lives on the farm, and we portray the character in the beginning before the horse has grown up, and it's sort of like the opening of the show, and it's quite a beautiful sequence about, you know, how Albert, the boy who rears the horse, and this horse, kind of their friendship, you know, and their relationship, and the horse growing up and them growing up together. So it was pretty special, and I also learned so much about horses and horse psychology, and it was a really sort of dense show intellectually as well as creatively and spiritually and everything. And I also, you know, I met some of the most special people in my life on that job. And that also says something, you know, in terms of that creates your experience as well, you know, the people that are around you. And when you spent 18 months with this group of people, you know, in all of your blood, sweat and tears and elation and adrenaline, when you share those things in such an intense space, I think you just never forget it. So.
That sounds really incredible, and it's making me think of as well, when you talk about blood, sweat and tears, many people watching this may or may not know how much work and how many people go into making a show, which can be very all-consuming. But when you're being the puppeteer in particular, when I was watching you in the Wicker Husband, for example, playing that character, you spent physically a lot of time hunched over, or kind of having to move your body in lots of different ways. And I wondered if you could speak a little bit about some of the physical challenges, and if people are interested, what they should start considering now about how to prepare themselves, how to prepare their body, and what type of things that you do to kind of keep yourself well. And
well, I think it is very physically demanding on the body, being a puppeteer of any kind. Like, even if you're not sort of hunched like I was, like that will sort of eventually tire your back a lot. So, but even if you're sort of working with marionette puppets, like anything that you're doing repetitively with your hands, sort of is going to be physically straining. So it's a sort of profession that comes with those kinds of realities that you sort of have to get on with, in sort of like, without sounding really brutal, it's kind of sort of comes with the job, and you kind of embrace it and do what you can to be able to deliver the work that you're asked to do, but stay healthy and, you know, make sure that you don't give yourself any long-term injuries. People do give themselves long-term injuries. I know many people who have kind of, you know, suffered from repetitive strain injury if they've been doing a show for a long time. And it's kind of sort of an occupational hazard in that kind of way, which is something you kind of have to keep an eye on. I work out. I mean, it's not really working out, but I go to the gym every day when I'm working on a show, which people think is sometimes mad, because they're like, "Why don't you get really exhausted by doing the show and going to the gym?" But I mean, it's not. All I'm doing is basically rehabilitating my body. I do kind of quite specific things in warming up my body, like that you wouldn't necessarily do if you weren't puppeteering. Like I do these things called nerve stretches, which is all about making sure that the nerves are gliding in your muscles like quite smoothly, and the muscles around your nerves are loose so that you don't get trapped nerves, which is very common in puppetry. And things like warming up tendons and ligaments, like really slowly, to make sure that they're primed for the day, basically. So that's all I'm doing at the gym. I'm not kind of, doing a HIIT class every day.
It still sounds like it is very physically demanding, and I'm hearing from what you're saying that if people really are interested in exploring becoming a puppeteer, they have to be prepared for some of those challenges that is part of the job, but whilst also being really mindful and taking care of themselves and building strength.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely is part of the job, and if you don't look after your body, then you won't. I mean, the longevity of your career is challenged, I think, for sure.
You mentioned the marionette puppets, which are they the ones on strings?
Yeah.
Could you maybe tell us a little bit about some of the different styles, maybe 3 different styles of puppeteering that you've worked with, and just a different bit about what they're called and how they work?
Yeah. So Bunraku style puppetry, I'll start with that one. So we're talking about Wicker Husband. Bunraku style puppetry I've done a lot of, mainly because it's the sort of theory that Warhorse is based on, even though it's in a horse, not a human. Traditionally, it's a human puppet. It's a Japanese style of puppetry, and the puppet is operated by 3 people. One person is operating the feet, one person is operating the body and one arm, and the other person is operating the other arm and the head. And that's the sort of makeup of puppeteers. And in Japan, actually, it's like you go through very intense, rigorous training in all 3 of those roles. And it's a big part of their history and tradition. So yeah, that's probably what I've done most of, but I've not really done it much with humans. Why the Wicker Husband was so exciting to have a life-size human Bunraku puppet. I don't think I've ever seen on stage. So pretty cool. So that's probably what I've done most of. I've also last summer I did an opera which had loads of different styles of puppetry in, and one was called Humanette, which is basically part your human body and part puppet. So we had these puppets that were sort of about this big. They were dolls, but they had no heads. So our faces were the puppet's head, and the rest of the body was the body. So we'd operate the hands with our hands and the feet with our hands, but our head was part of the puppet.
Wow.
Which is really interesting because you can be the expression, which is counterintuitive as a puppeteer because your expression as a puppeteer should remain fairly neutral. So that was a really good challenge for me. And also we did glove puppets on that show.
What puppets are it?
Glove puppets.
Oh, okay.
Basically, we had these very traditional glove puppets where you have 2 or sometimes 3 fingers, depending on. Hello. Oh,
sorry, we just missed.
2, sometimes 3 fingers manipulating the head, and then your little finger and your thumb are manipulating the arms. So I mean, think Punch and Judy style puppetry.
Yeah, or like Sooty and Sweep.
Exactly, yeah, exactly that. So yeah, we had glove puppets in that show as well, and they were pretty fun because I've not really done much of that. And actually, you don't do much of that unless it's for television now. So
Yeah.
that was interesting.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you for sharing that. It's really interesting. I feel like I could listen to you talk about all your different puppet work all day, but I'm a bit worried about the internet and whether or not this is actually recorded. I really hope this is working. It's our first time trying, so I'm gonna just check down my questions, and yeah, so I've got just a couple more quick questions. We obviously love having you as part of the Watermill community, and we can hear that you love being with us as well. But I just wondered if there's any other companies that people could or should look out for that specifically work using puppets.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a bunch of companies. Guy and Gimbal. I'll start with Guy and Gimbal because Finn Caldwell, who was our puppetry director for the Wicker Husband, makes up half of that company, and he runs Guy and Gimbal with another puppeteer, designer, director called Toby Ollier, and they have a company called Guy and Gimbal, and they make really interesting work of all sort of different kinds. They have a tour that they are ready to go out, I think, at the end of this year. That is Bunraku puppetry with carved, small, like traditional Bunraku style puppets, and it's all to classical music, to Vivaldi's Four Seasons, and it's a devised piece. It's very, very cool. So they're going to do a tour of that. And yeah, they've done a bunch of other stuff. And actually, for anyone who's interested in the educational side of puppetry, they also run puppetry courses. And they do puppetry courses for being a puppeteer and also making puppets as well.
Amazing. Definitely put the link to their company in a resource that we can out.
Absolutely, I will. So that I'll start with them. Another company I've worked with a bit are called Brunskill and Grimes. Andy Brunskill and Jimmy Grimes were my associate directors on Warhorse. They met doing that show. Same as Finn and Toby and Gary and Gimbal. They met doing Warhorse. So it's actually, that show has produced a lot of young theatre companies, which is exciting. And they're doing some interesting stuff, and they also run some courses of their own, short courses in puppetry, so I will link you to them. Those are the two that I've worked with a lot. I've also worked with a company called Puppets with Guts, who make massive festival puppets, so giant, sometimes sort of really real, sometimes quite abstract, huge puppets to sort of do marches with. I worked with them on a giant puppet that we marched in Brighton during Brighton Pride, which was very cool. Blind Summit are another they're quite an old company now. They've been going for quite a while, and they make some interesting work. Yeah, those are I can think of at the moment. And Moth Physical Theatre, who I think I spoke to you about. They're a young theatre company who are really coming up in sort of devised theatre and puppetry as well. So.
Fantastic. That definitely gives us, anyone listening, a chance to go and research further, and look into puppeteering and all of the different ways we can get involved. So I'm just going to finish off by asking you kind of one question with two strands. You're going to be delivering, or over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be offering workshops and masterclasses to people just to try out puppetry. Not necessarily anyone that wants to go on to being a puppeteer, but just for a bit of fun. What tips would you give anyone watching as they approach these different masterclasses? And then maybe you could speak about, if people are interested in pursuing a career as an actor puppeteer, what advice would you give them? So sort of some advice for the ones amongst us that maybe just want to do it as a bit of a hobby and something to pass time over the next few weeks, and then something for people that actually are interested in it professionally.
Yeah, sure. So for the workshops, I'd say my biggest piece of advice is try and just dive in. Try and allow your imagination to run wild. Often puppetry can sort of it's very fun, and it can be very silly and really charming, and I think some people get nervous by that.
I think I would if I was going to try it.
Yeah,
Well, I can't do that, or it's not for me.
yeah, absolutely, and it's very common as well to think that. And I teach workshops so often, and the first half an hour is sort of just trying to get people to come out of their shell, and then by the end of it, you've got people running around with bits of brown paper that they've made into some sort of like flying dragon, and they, they've created this whole story with another character made of I don't know, a water bottle or something. And yeah, I mean, it's all about letting your imagination run wild. So yeah, just try and have fun and muck about, and yeah, release all of those inhibitions. So that's what I'd say for people, anyone wanting to join in with the workshops at home. And also, you're in the comfort of your own home, so you don't, anything that you do film, you don't have to show to anyone. You can just have it for you, and if you do want to show people, then that's great, but there's no sort of pressure to do it live in front of people, or in a show. So yeah, you have free rein. So that's for people at home, and anyone who's kind of interested in taking puppetry on as a career or learning a bit more about it. I think the advice I would give is try and watch as much as you can, and if that isn't live theatre, then recorded bits of shows that you can find online. I think watch people talking about puppetry and demonstrating puppetry. I think with puppeteering, even though it's such a physical experience, you actually learn so much more from watching than you do doing.
Right.
And that's really sort of key to remember. In rehearsal processes, I often spend a lot of time watching other teams make something, or watching other puppeteers working, and you can see something from a totally different perspective, and it's very interesting to learn. So I'm going to I did say that I was going to try and get some links together for people interested in going into puppeteering, and things that they can watch. And also remember that your kind of relationship with puppetry is unique to you, and any style of puppetry that you wish to be interested in is absolutely up to you, and you can allow your creativity to come out to its full.
Amazing. Oh, well, thank you so much for answering all of those questions, and for meeting with me across the internet today, to share your journey. It's been so interesting.
Good. I'm glad some of it's useful, and I'm really doing some more stuff for you at home.
And so going forward, just to tell everyone that's watching at home, we're going to be doing a number of different masterclasses and workshops, some of which Scarlett is going to film some kind of workshops for us, and there will be an opportunity, if you want to share them with us, to do so. So we look forward to seeing your creations and letting your imaginations run wild, and just getting in and having a go, especially at this time when we're all stuck at home. So thank you everyone for watching this interview today, and apologies if signal was a bit bad, or there was dogs barking in the background, or the washing machine, I think you might be able to hear. So hopefully you've managed to make it through to the end. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and goodbye.